Many people dream of starting a family someday. But for some, the miracle of birth is exactly that, a miracle. Not everyone can have a baby in the so-called prime of their lives. But is it ever too late to start? Well, we're about to take a look at the remarkable story of Adriana Iliescu, the woman who gave birth at 66 years old back in 2005. Over 15 years after her story took the world by storm, how has life turned out for this mature mother and her miracle baby? Adriana Iliescu was born into a wealthy, middle-class, educated family on the 31st of May, 1938. When she was just 20 years old, Adriana got married and fell pregnant. But she was advised to have an abortion by doctors because she had recently recovered from tuberculosis, and medical professionals feared for the baby's survival. Adriana reluctantly agreed and decided to focus on herself for a while. She got a job as a professor at a university in Romania, and even started writing a series of children's novels. Adriana later admitted, "I couldn't even think about a child as I was working." But by the time she turned 37 years old, after she had completed her doctorate, she was finally ready to start a family of her own. Sadly, Adriana's husband left her when she was just 24 years old, and she became wedded to her career instead. But Adriana never remarried, and as the years went by, she started to feel like her family dream was slowly slipping away from her. That is, until she heard about a revolutionary new birth treatment called in vitro fertilization, and her life changed forever. In vitro fertilization, popularly known as IVF, captured the attention of the public when it was first introduced in the UK back in 1978. But the first IVF baby in Romania wasn't born until nearly 20 years later, in February 1996, when Adriana Iliescu was already 57 years old. During IVF, the egg is removed from a woman's ovaries and fertilized with sperm in a laboratory. The newly fertilized egg, called an embryo, is then returned to the woman's womb to grow and develop. The process can either be carried out using eggs or sperm from a partner or from donors. When Adriana Iliescu first heard about this miraculous treatment, she knew it might be the very thing she had been waiting for. Adriana had been receiving hormone therapy to try and reverse the effects of menopause since 1995, and already had one failed pregnancy in 2000. So, in 2004, at the age of 65, she decided it was now or never. Before we find out how one decision turned Adriana Iliescu's life upside down, why don't you make a decision that will surely better your own life by hitting those like and subscribe buttons. And don't forget to tickle that little bell icon too. That way you'll be the first to know when I upload more amazing content. Now, where were we? Adriana contacted an IVF expert, Dr. Bogdan Marinescu, and was later impregnated with an egg and sperm donated anonymously. To everyone's surprise, Adriana became pregnant with not one, not two, but 3 babies. But her pregnancy was very touch and go, and sadly, 2 of the 3 triplets didn't make it. Although doctors were expecting to perform a cesarean section, soon after the 34th week of Adriana's pregnancy, they decided it was time to act fast to save the remaining baby. On the 16th of January 2005, a baby girl was delivered about 6 weeks prematurely at Giulești Maternity Hospital in Bucharest. She weighed around 3 pounds, less than half the weight of the average newborn. Adriana named her Eliza Maria Iliescu. At the time, Adriana became the world's oldest mother, at the age of 66 years old, 230 days, earning herself a spot in the Guinness Book of World Records. Although Eliza may not be Adriana's genetic child, she is her biological child, since she gestated in her mother's womb. But as far as Adriana is concerned, Eliza is her first and only daughter, and that's all that matters. Although this was without a doubt the happiest moment in Adriana's life, not everyone felt like celebrating. After spending about 6 weeks in the intensive care unit, Eliza was finally strong enough to leave the hospital. Being a highly religious person, Adriana wanted to get her daughter christened as soon as possible. But different religious and ethical organizations described her decision to have a baby as grotesque, horrifying, and the ultimate act of selfishness. During the christening ceremony, some of the nuns shot Adriana accusing looks, and she even heard that one of them had called Eliza the product of a dark force. Of course, Adriana chose to ignore their unkindness. believing that her daughter was sent to her by God. But this negative encounter would sadly be a taste of what was to come. Before we hear more about what happened to Adriana Iliescu, what do you make of her decision to have a baby at such a late stage? Is she selfish, or just a woman proving that it's never too late to chase your dreams? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm genuinely interested. The thing is, when you become the world's oldest mother, people suddenly start to take an interest in your life. Adriana's story made headlines around the world, and not all reports were positive. The simple fact that Adriana had become a first-time mother at 66 sparked a debate about whether fertility treatment is ethical once a woman reaches a certain age. Although Eliza was born without any underlying health conditions, many medical experts condemned the miraculous birth, saying that the strain of giving birth could have proven too much for such an elderly mother. When asked about Adriana Iliescu, Richard Kennedy, a spokesperson for the British Fertility Society, said, "My personal opinion is that it was completely irresponsible, and she shouldn't have gone ahead." According to Kennedy, pregnancy already places an increased burden on the heart, and a typical woman in her mid-60s is likely to have some degree of coronary heart disease. Medical News Today and Mayo Clinic also state a number of other risks involved in childbirth over 50, including miscarriage, premature birth, and the development of gestational diabetes, high blood pressure, or dangerous blood clots. However, Adriana Iliescu has always maintained that she is completely healthy. In an interview in 2008, just after her 70th birthday, she said, "I'm fit and healthy, and I've never had any illnesses. I don't smoke, I don't drink. If I live as long as my parents did, Eliza will be 20 by the time I pass away." Even if Adriana were to outlive the average current Romanian life expectancy of 75, public opinion was divided as to whether having a baby at such a senior age was even ethical. One of the main concerns was that Eliza Maria might face the loss of her mother relatively early in her life. After all, Adriana was already old enough to be Eliza's grandmother when she gave birth to her. Many American and European clinics already refuse to inseminate women beyond a set age, which is usually around 50. But there was no such law in Romania to limit the age at which women can receive fertility assistance. After hearing Adriana's story, the British Fertility Society were among those who campaigned to review Romanian laws to bring them in line with European legislation. However, there is no such limit when it comes to male partners. So, while a 60-year-old woman with a 25-year-old husband would have trouble obtaining IVF treatment, a 49-year-old woman with an 85-year-old husband would not. Some might argue that this makes little sense, especially as the child of the 25-year-old father is more likely to have at least one parent survive into adulthood. Then again, you also have to consider the health risks associated with childbirth, which increase with age. But Adriana didn't go blindly into her decision without proper consideration. Before Eliza was born, she came to an agreement with the doctor who carried out the IVF procedure. In the case of Adriana's death, the doctor agreed to become Eliza's godfather and would act as her official representative until she came of age. According to Jonathan Marascus, a pediatrician at the Loyola University Medical Center in Maywood, Illinois, the real challenge for elderly mothers may come years after the child's birth. As our bodies naturally slow down with age, it becomes harder to meet the demands of a child who is growing up quickly. In Marascus' words, it is going to be hard for an 80-year-old lady to raise a teenager. But when it seemed like all odds were stacked against her, Adriana Iliescu rose to the challenge and managed to prove everyone wrong. Since Adriana was already retired when Eliza Maria was born, she was able to devote all of her time to raising her baby girl properly. In 2008, when her daughter was 3 years old, Adriana said in an interview, "Motherhood is so much more than I hoped for. It is relaxing looking after a child. It's everything else that's tiring." I'm sure there are plenty of mothers who would disagree with the relaxing part, but for Adriana, it is a total joy. Although many people worried that Adriana wouldn't be able to match the energy of a young child, she surprised even her greatest critics by being heavily involved in Eliza's childhood. However, she admits that it took some adjusting to have a child for the first time at her age. In fact, she said she hardly had time to wash her own hair sometimes. Adriana also took on 7 hours of teaching a week at Bucharest University, as well as extra tutorials and seminars to support herself and her daughter. During that time, a taxi was sent to her house to take Eliza to a local creche and drop her back again in the afternoon. And just like any new mother, Adriana was nervous when Eliza started preschool, aged 3. Although some of Eliza's friends and teachers sometimes assumed that Adriana was Eliza's grandmother, her daughter didn't seem to care. As far as she is concerned, Adriana isn't just her mother, but her best friend too. Besides, Adriana doesn't let people's words hurt her. She said, "People think they're being funny when they call me Granny, but I didn't have Eliza to make me look younger. I never feel my years." In fact, Adriana doesn't even feel the need to tell Eliza her own age and simply says, "Eliza, your mother is older than 40 and gave birth a little later on. Be happy your mom is healthy, has money, and can look after you." Thankfully, that's more than enough for Eliza. The pair are inseparable and have often been photographed walking hand in hand together and accompanying each other shopping and sightseeing around their hometown. In 2010, it was reported that Adriana, who had just turned 72, was starting to feel broody again. In an interview, she said, "The mirror is unkind to women. But if we're talking about my energy, then I feel like a young woman. I feel like I'm 27. And when I feel a bit more tired, I feel like I'm 37. I'm healthier than women more than half my age." At the time, Eliza was only 5 years old, and the notion that Adriana might already be considering another baby was enough to send people into a spin. But Adriana was quick to clear things up. Just because she felt she could give birth again if she wanted to, didn't mean she was planning on it. She explained, "Medically, it's possible. I'm fine, healthy, and I think it would be possible to have another child in the future. But I'm not in a rush at the moment." Not in a rush at 72. You have to respect this woman's optimistic outlook on life. Besides, Adriana was still infatuated with her beloved daughter. She said, "I'm so close to Eliza, so bonded with her. I'm not sure I'd be able to consider having another child if it actually came to it." Whew! But over 15 years after Adriana Iliescu left the hospital with her precious baby girl in her arms, how has life turned out for this remarkable mother and her miracle daughter? Adriana and Eliza Iliescu now live together in a 2-bedroom high-rise flat in the Romanian capital of Bucharest, where they've lived ever since Eliza was born. When Eliza was younger, Adriana would often be seen mingling with the other mothers as her daughter played on the swings near their 9-floor home in the apartment block. The pair get by on Adriana's $344 per month pension, which she earns from her part-time work as an academic at the city's university, despite having already retired. Adriana, heavily lined with dyed black hair and an eccentric fashion style, is now 82 years old, but she certainly doesn't feel it. She still lives a very active lifestyle and continues to involve herself in Eliza's social life as much as possible. Meanwhile, Eliza, who has recently turned 16, is a model student at Dimitri Pachioria College in Bucharest. As she grew up, Eliza developed an interest in science and won several school competitions, and Adriana was there with her every step of the way. She hopes to send her daughter to university to watch her grow into a beautiful young woman, and she even dreams of having grandkids someday. But life hasn't been easy for this remarkable mother. She admits that she's faced social rejection in Romania ever since the story of her daughter's miracle birth made the news, but the incredible bond she shares with Eliza makes it all worthwhile in the end. When Eliza is old enough, Adriana will explain the exact circumstances of her birth in a little more detail. But for now, the pair are living blissfully in their mother-daughter bubble. And did I forget to mention that Adriana is no longer the world's oldest mother? In recent years, pregnancy over the age of 50 has become possible for many women, thanks to advances in reproductive technology, particularly egg donation. Despite various health concerns, one study from 2002 of women who gave birth in their 50s using donated eggs concluded that there does not appear to be any definitive medical reason for excluding these women from attempting pregnancy on the basis of age alone. Just 1 year after Adriana Iliescu gave birth to Eliza, another remarkable story was reported in Spain. On the 29th or 30th of December 2006, depending on conflicting reports, Maria del Carmen Busada de Lara became the world's oldest verified mother when she gave birth to twin boys named Christian and Pau. Busada was 66 years and 358 days old at the time, making her 128 days older than Adriana Iliescu. The twins were delivered prematurely by C-section in the Hospital de Sant Pau in Barcelona. and weighed around 3.5 pounds each. Bousada had worked as an employee for a department store before she retired and never married. She spent most of her life living with her mother in the city of Cadiz before deciding to pursue single parenthood after her mother passed away in 2005. Just like in Adriana Iliescu's case, Bousada became pregnant with the help of IVF treatment. In fact, she sold her house in order to raise the funds she needed, which was the equivalent of around $59,000. Bousada's twins were born happy and healthy, but that didn't stop people from characterizing her decision to have children as selfish, unnatural, and wrong. Some critics even went as far as to call her children innocent victims in her pernicious plan for reproductive self-gratification. Jeez, those are some big and harsh words. Surely the fact that women like Maria del Carmen de Lara Bousada and Adriana Iliescu are willing to spend upwards of $50,000 just to bear children via IEF is enough to prove that those children are more than just means to some selfish end. This moral outrage wasn't helped by Bousada confessing that she had lied to physicians about her age. She had claimed to be 55 when seeking IVF treatment at the Pacific Fertility Center in California, the clinic's cutoff point for treating single women. At the time, the clinic's director, Vikin Sahakian, expressed disappointment at Bousada's deceit and promised to be more careful in the future. Even her own brothers publicly criticized her decision. In 2007, Manuel Bousada said, "My mother would roll in her grave if she knew what my sister has done. She would ask, 'How are you going to bring up two boys at your age?'" Despite being a figure of considerable controversy, Bousada also became an outspoken advocate for the rights of older mothers. In an interview in 2006, she stated, "Yes, I am old, of course, but if I live as old as my mother, who died at the age of 101, imagine, I could even have grandchildren." Sadly, that dream never became a reality when Bousada passed away from ovarian cancer on July 11, 2009, aged 69. Her sons, who were 2.5 years old at the time, went into the care of her nephew and his wife. In November 2008, 2 years after Bousada's twins were born, a 72-year-old woman from northern India, Rajo Devi Lohan, became the world's official oldest documented mother after she gave birth to a baby girl named Naveen Lohan. For years, Rajo Devi and her 72-year-old husband, Baba Ram, had endured village gossip and avoided neighbors at local weddings and festivals as they failed to preserve their family's honor by starting a family. Baba Ram later told an interviewer, "We were known as the people who could not have children. It's not a good thing in the village." The couple were wed via an arranged marriage when they were barely older than kids themselves. Baba Ram was 14 and Rajo Devi was 12. They spent the next 15 years trying everything they could think of to start a family. They visited local quacks, took herbal medicines, and sought blessings from the high priests of the area's biggest temples, but nothing worked. Locals told Baba he should leave his wife, but the couple didn't give in to the pressure and continued to pray to God to give them a child. The elderly couple had accepted their fate when a neighbor informed them about a 60-year-old woman who had had twins through IVF in a nearby hospital. He also told them that, unlike other parts of the world, IVF doctors in India don't need to consider a mother's age, only her physique. Inspired by this amazing story, the Lohans decided it was worth a shot. The couple sold 2 buffaloes, took a government loan, and mortgaged their rice, wheat, and sugar cane crops to afford the treatment. They purchased an egg from an anonymous donor for IVF and were surprised to learn that Rajo Devi was pregnant. Who else can say they entered their 70s with morning sickness? When asked whether an elderly woman should be allowed to give birth, Rajo Devi said, "I am strong. I used to work 12 hours every day in the fields. The doctor told me I have the strength of someone half my age. Even when I'm 80, I will be able to catch Naveen if she runs away." If both parents are to pass away while their daughter is still young, they've already agreed for extended family to step in and look after her. The couple are even hoping to conceive through IVF for a second time. Next, they hope to have a son, as boys are valued in Indian society both for bringing a dowry through marriage and retaining the family name. In the village, the partying did not stop for 10 days after Naveen was brought home from the hospital. As far as this community is concerned, the miracle baby is cause for celebration rather than the product of a woman in her 70s selfishly deciding to have children. It's no surprise that Adriana Iliescu, Maria del Carmen Busada de Lara and Rajo Devi Lohan all faced their fair share of controversies after becoming first-time mothers during their 60s and 70s. But what do you make of these remarkable stories of later life mothering? Is it ethical to start a family so late in life through IVF? And should children be raised by parents who are old enough to be their grandparents? In the years since these women faced such harsh criticism for their decision, later life mothering has become increasingly more common. In fact, data published by the UK Office for National Statistics in June 2018 showed the number of births to 50-plus women had more than quadrupled over the last 2 decades, up from 55 in 2001 to 238 in 2016. Of course, there are various health concerns when it comes to later life mothering, but surely there are some benefits too. For starters, older women generally have more time to devote to raising their children, but also have more life experience to draw from. Whether you agree with her decision or not, there's no denying that Adriana Iliescu poured her heart and soul into raising Eliza, and she wouldn't change that for the world. Let me know your thoughts on this controversial topic in the comments below, and if you love hearing about unusual life stories, why not check this video out next? Thanks for watching, guys.